On today's episode of Angel's Garage, I began stripping. The car. Not me. In order to prep this car for paint and bodywork, I first have to remove everything that I physically can from this car. This includes things like the rear axle, steering system, the windows, and all of the interior. Thankfully, the previous owner made this job a lot easier for me, as the majority of the interior and trim have already been removed. All those loose parts have been chilling inside the Thunderbird for the last few years, so now my first task is to remove all those parts. I go ahead and remove everything from inside the car and transfer it to my storage unit, also known as my 64 Thunderbird. I did find some interesting pieces while pulling all the parts out. The first is my scuff plates, proudly displaying the Ford logo. I then found my mirror and the excitement pedal, aka the accelerator pedal. After removing all the loose pieces, I now have a cleaner interior. I even got to sit down in the car for the first time. This gave me a bit of anxiety, honestly, because it brought into perspective how much work needs to be done to this car still. With the 63 looking like the truck from Sanford & Son now, it's time to fill up the 64 with all the loose pieces. Now, while I normally wouldn't recommend having multiple project cars at once, this is definitely one benefit: free storage! The next day, I move on to cleaning out the trunk. This was also full of interesting pieces, including the instrument cluster, which, minus the electrical tape, is actually in really good condition, the taillights, which were designed to look like afterburners on a jet, a Fix-Your Ford manual from 1968, which apparently never got used because now everything on this Ford is broken, a radio that will one day blast some tunes in this car, and last but not least, one of the original badges from the car, again in really good condition. At the end, I'm finally left with a nice, clean trunk. Except for this pile of rusty bolts here that looks like they were salvaged from the Titanic. Finally, I place all the parts into the 64 Thunderbird, where they will likely be forgotten about for another 15 years. Moving on. With a clean car now, I can begin the more technical work involved with stripping a car. The first thing I want to remove is the seats. The front seats are bolted straight through the floor of the car, which requires me to go underneath the car to loosen. So my first task is to jack up the car. With the car up, I can now unbolt the front two seats and remove them from the car. After the front two seats are out, I then remove the two trim panels in the back. And then remove the rear bench seat. I am then able to remove the center console. Under the center console, I found a screwdriver left by the previous owner. I will love and cherish this screwdriver for as long as I live! And without a little bit of work, the interior is now remarkably bare. This is a good place to begin documentation. Something that I highly recommend doing is taking a lot of pictures during disassembly. Not only does this give you something to look back on when the car is done, but if you ever have a question on how something is supposed to go back together, you can always reference your photos. After getting plenty of photos, I began working on removing the driver's side vent window. Even though my main task is stripping the car, I can't help myself from starting on the bodywork. My first job is to remove this stupid cover that the previous owner so kindly welded over the door handle. I begin this task by applying paint stripper to the area I'll be working in. While the paint stripper does its thing, I go ahead and start removing the wheels. Once the wheels are off, I turn my attention back to the door handle. I go ahead and grab my friend, Mr. Angle Grinder, who makes quick work of removing all the paint and Bondo surrounding this mistake. After getting down the bare steel and seeing where all the welds were, I do my best to carefully cut out this cover using my new friend, Mr. Hacksaw.
Oh, that was easy.
After removing the midsection, I turn my attention to the end pieces.
Amazing welding job. Now we can just repeat this over here. Awesome.
Following a quick cleanup with the angle grinder, I went ahead and set the door trim piece in place to see how the door handle would look.
Nice. Much better.
The hood was the next piece to come off, and after it came off, this gave me my first look at the engine bay. And it was actually surprisingly clean in there. Other than pulling some parts and a quick paint job, not much actually needs to be done in here. Next up on the chopping block was the gas tank. After placing the floor jack and a 4x4 in the worst possible place, I began loosening the strap bolts. After fixing the jack and the block of wood, I go ahead and cut the gas line, and then disconnect the electrical plugs. And with all of that done, I could finally lower the gas tank. I must say, this gas tank is pretty tiny. That coupled with an engine that can maybe make 7 miles per gallon going downhill means I better not plan on making very many long trips in this car. Next up, I remove the headlight bucket from the passenger side. And with that done, it's time to start removing the passenger fender. Ford definitely didn't want this fender coming off easily with all the bolts they had holding this stupid thing in place.
So something is holding onto this fender quite well, as we can see here. So I'm hoping if I pull off this splash shield here, hopefully my last few bolts are behind there.
Yeah, so the bolts weren't in there. I now set my sights on some other bolts I can needlessly take off.
Alright, so the splash shield didn't have to come out. What I think has to come out is, you see how there's 4 bolts on this door hinge here? Well, I think those back 2 sunk in are actually holding that fender in place, because I looked inside the fender and it looks like there's actually a little bit of a subframe connected to that fender. So I'm going to try pulling out these back bolts, and hopefully that gets this fender off. It feels pretty solid, so I imagine it's probably those guys. Now, if anyone's curious as to why I'm asking these questions, not just looking at a shop manual, I ordered my shop manual, but that's not going to be here in about 2 weeks. So I didn't feel like waiting around for 2 weeks, so I'm just going to kind of wing it and see what happens. But I see daylight through those holes, so I think this is correct. Please. Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
So those bolts were wrong too. Then I made a breakthrough.
I see like 1 bolt in there. That might be it. That feels more positive. Alright. You. That didn't sound good. Oh, please let this be the one. Finally! Finally! Hi there! Great news! I finally got the fender off! Oh, awesome! That's great news! Yeah, that's great, but here it comes. So that noise I heard last night, turns out that was the door shifting down, because I was not supposed to remove those bolts up front. So now when I try to open the door, it don't do nothing. So now I have something else to fix.
I'll worry about the door later. For now, it's time to work on the driver's side fender. This one had just about all the bolts removed by the previous owner, with the exception of one, which I pulled out real quick now that I'm an expert on removing 1963 Thunderbird fenders.
Perfect. Alright, so I'm going to try to remove all of these bolts right here, and try to remove this rear quarter window here, and again, since I don't have a manual, I'm just going to be kind of winging it here, so we'll see how this goes. That did something. Alright. You can come on out. So I think I'm going to need to pull this motor. Ay, oh. I don't want to drop this glass because I really want to reuse all the original glass that I can. Anyway, I think I need to pull this motor off before I can pull this remainder of this track out. Then I think the window might be able to just slide out, but we will see. Of course, I knew that was too easy. Think. You can please move out of the way. Okay, so if I pull these two bolts, the window should come out. Then I'll just deal with this track and motor mess later. Oh, something fell down. Oh, here we go. Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh, that's what's holding us up, huh? I'll take care of that. Yes. So I think I have to pull this nut on top, then I think the motor can slide out. But since I'm not in a particular hurry anymore, now that I got the glass out, I'm going to wait till I get my shop manual before disconnecting the motor the rest of the way. But I'm pretty sure that's all that's left. But we will wait and see. I'm going to try to pull the glass out on that side. Yay. You are kidding me, right? Someone put these nuts on backwards. You see, you're supposed to have the little star portion there facing in, not out. Freaking genius. There we go. Alright, so I was just kind of tugging back here, and look at this. The bumper is already halfway off, so I'm going to take a quick look and see what's left holding this guy on. But apparently it was not as secured as I originally thought. And I think I just found the bolt. Looks like there's only one bolt left holding this guy on. We'll see about that. I think that was it. At least I think so. That side seems ready to come off. Might be one more bolt on this side. Let that be a reminder. Always be ready for the unexpected.
After the rear bumper incident, It was time to pull the trunk lid.
You're clear, you're clear.
At this point, my dad was seeing all the progress I was making and felt left out, so he decided to jump in and start working on removing the rear glass. He was doing a good job working on this, and I was doing a good job, supervising. Yeah, we'll go with that. Now, we were trying to remove this window for a while. We were trying to be careful and cut the seal all the way around the window, but it still wasn't coming out. Then, I grew a brain cell and found out the metal piece below the window needed to come out. And below that metal piece was more metal pieces. These were the last pieces holding the window in the car. And with all of those pieces finally off the car, the window was finally ready to come out.
The corner we're going to lift up and we're going to walk behind the car over the hinges. Very easy. Very easy. Okay.
I make sure to back up all the bolts and other hardware I've been pulling off the last few days before I forget where any of it goes, which it turns out I'm pretty good at. Now the car is stripped down pretty good. It isn't done, of course, but the finish line is in sight now. Alright, I think about wraps up today's video. So, I'm honestly not done stripping the car yet, so in the next video I'm going to continue stripping the car, but I'm also going to begin paint stripping the car and doing some more body work, and maybe I'll get around to stripping the undercoating and beginning to redo the underside of the car. But other than that, I think it's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.